Hey, what's up? John Sonmez here. So today I'm going to be answering some fitness questions. I got a really good question that a lot of people have asked me about since I am not really a calorie counter. I don't really count calories, which is how do I build muscle and burn fat without counting calories? How to build muscle and fat without counting calories. So this is an interesting dilemma, right? I think most people in the fitness industry will tell you that that's not really possible. You need to count calories, you need to pay attention to your macros. And while I agree with the sentiment of needing to pay attention to your macros, I typically do not count calories. Not that I haven't ever done that in my life or in my fitness life, but in general, I'm able to achieve the results of actually building muscle, actually burning fat, and getting lean and keeping muscle when I get lean without doing any kind of calorie counting at all, pretty much. So let me tell you about how I do this and how you can do this as well. The first thing that I do, well, let's talk a little bit about why and how this is possible first. Right? I think that's probably a good place to start. So first of all, in order to burn fat, okay, right, in order to lose weight, essentially burn fat, you need to be in a calorie deficit. That's the key, most important thing. Macros, ketogenic diets, intermittent fasting, none of that shit matters so much as being in the calorie deficit, okay? Anyone who's trying to tell you that there's some kind of magical hack that doesn't involve a calorie deficit is selling you some shit, and it just ain't true. Now, the only possible exception to this is within body recomposition, okay, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit because that's what I'm effectively doing is body recomposition, okay? But at any given time, okay, your body is either going to be in an anabolic or catabolic state. So it's either going to be building, right, acquiring new tissue, acquiring new, substance, all right, new muscle, maybe new fat, okay, or it's going to be catabolic. It's going to be using up energy stores for energy, right? So it's going to be drawing from the fat stores, drawing glycogen from the muscles or from the liver, right? There's a lot of different ways that your body can actually create energy from ATP, from, when you're doing a super anaerobic type of exercise when you're sprinting, right? Things like that. So there's a lot of different ways that this can happen, okay? Now, the reason why I'm telling you this is because you have to understand that our bodies don't work on a 24-hour clock cycle, okay? So if you think that, your body knows how many calories you've eaten in a day and it says, oh, time to gain fat or time to lose muscle, it doesn't work that way, right? It doesn't work that way at all. In fact, your body is a continuous system, right, that is constantly in adaptation, right, to whatever the stimulus is, right? So whatever the environment is, you take in food, that causes a reaction in your body, right? If you take some carbohydrates, for example, there will be an insulin reaction in your body, which will cause the blood sugar, right? Your muscles or your fat cells, their insulin receptors will bind to the insulin, which will take the sugar out of the blood and provide energy or store energy, right? If you are tapping your energy systems and there's not enough blood sugar, the opposite's going to happen, right? You're going to have lipolysis, where basically fat is going to be turned into, it's going to go to the liver, where it's going to be converted back into glucose that can be used by your muscles, right, in the systems of your body that require it. Okay, so I'm just telling you this to give you some background so that you can understand why this is possible and sort of the mechanics of how I do this and how this can work, right? Okay, so if you think about that system, and you think about how it's continuously working like that, then you have to understand that what we can do is we can manipulate that system, right? Even though we can't violate this rule, like you're either catabolic or anabolic, we can't violate that rule itself, but within a day, within 2 days, within a week time frame, we can go from anabolic to catabolic and catabolic to anabolic, right? And so if we're trying to burn fat and keep muscle or gain muscle, okay, then what we can do is we can stay in a catabolic state a large amount of time, right, in a deficit, okay, and we can be anabolic at certain windows. And that's the key, and that's what I do here. So I don't count calories, okay, but what I do is I fast every day until about 5 p.m., some days until 7 p.m., but I essentially eat one meal a day. Now, I'm not saying that there's not ever any exception to this, but I've been doing this for about 3 years, and I've achieved the best physique that I've been able to. I've gained muscle in that time. I've lost fat. I've had some ups and downs. It definitely depends on what my diet is, what I'm eating. But that's kind of the core principle, right? And the core thing that I'm trying to do when I'm doing this is I'm recognizing the fact that I need to be in a calorie deficit if I want to burn fat in general. Now, like I said, body recomposition, if you think about this, okay, what I just told you about the mechanism of how our body works from the anabolic to catabolic state, it is technically feasible and possible, okay, although very, very difficult, to be in a slight calorie surplus, okay, and still lose fat. How could that be possible? Well, you have to be in a small enough surplus, and you have to be manipulating this catabolic, anabolic phases, right? You have to be manipulating this such that you burn fat, and then when you're burning fat, when you're in that catabolic state, after that you go to an anabolic state, and you use those extra calories to actually build muscle. So most of the time, this is only going to be possible as a very beginner, okay, or someone who's untrained with weightlifting, but it is possible for even some experienced people. I know I've been in a calorie surplus for some time where I've actually seen the body fat percentage go down while my muscle mass went up, okay? So again, what am I talking about here? It's essentially this idea of manipulating the system, knowing when you're turning things to catabolic and when you're turning things to an anabolic state, and taking an advantage to get the most out of the anabolic state as possible and get the most out of the catabolic state as possible, okay? That's the key here, right? If you don't pay attention to timing, right? Most people look at macros and they look at calorie counts, which again, like I said, deficit is important for losing weight for the most part, for burning fat. And most people look at those two things, but they don't look at timing. But timing is, if not equally, more important, because the timing can determine what happens, right? Because again, let me lay a really solid foundation for you guys, because a lot of you might be confused by what I'm saying. It's okay. There's a lot of ways to look at this, and I'm going to slice it a few different ways. That's why this is going to be a somewhat long video, okay? So let's look at it from this slice. Let's say that you are in a deficit of 300 calories, okay? Now, where does that come from, right? Your body has multiple sources to provide energy, right? So it could come directly from the glycogen that's stored in your muscles, right? Or your liver. That's blood sugar, right? That's essentially glucose that is stored in your muscles that can be released into the bloodstream and can be used for energy. Okay, so your body needs 300 calories in order to function, in order to run, to whatever it is. Where can it draw that from? Let's say you went for a 30-minute run, right? It needs 300 calories to do that, okay? So it could come from glycogen that's stored, okay? If it's a really quick, because you're doing explosive exercises, it can come from another mechanism within the muscles, which isn't as efficient, which is totally anaerobic, okay? And we're not getting into details there, but some of that could come from there. There's not much that you can draw from that, but in times of desperate need, when you've got to produce energy really quickly, it's very inefficient, but it can happen from there, okay? It can come from body fat, right? So we could take our stored body fat, right? For you guys, it's here and here, right? It can come from there, right? Through lipolysis, and that fat can be broken down and turned into glucose and used as energy. Okay, but it can also come from muscle proteins, right? So your muscle, right? Your bicep could be cannibalized to give you the energy that you need in order to be able to run for half an hour, right? So there's a lot of different sources, okay? Now, the same thing could happen if you're in a calorie surplus, right? So if we're in a calorie surplus, let's say we have 300 extra calories that we can't use right now, Okay, that could be turned into. It could be turned into if it's amino acids, and we have the amino acids that we need. If we have the building blocks that we need, and we have the right stimulus to our muscles, it can be turned into protein. Right? It could actually be turned into muscle. If we're depleted in our glycogen stores, it could be stored with water, 3 parts water per 1 part glycogen or glucose. It could be stored into our muscles, or it could be stored into our liver, right? Or it could be stored as body fat, right? It could be converted to fat and stored in the liver. It could be converted to fat and then stored efficiently into our body fat, right? There's a lot of places that these calories can go. Okay, so that's, and again, why am I telling you all this? So you can understand that just burning 300 calories or having a surplus of 300 calories, neither of those things means much in itself, because you could burn 300 calories and not burn any fat, and you could have a surplus of 300 calories and you could gain fat, or you could not gain fat. You could gain muscle, or you could just store the calories into glycogen. This is why this is so important, okay? And this is how I can get away with doing this without counting calories, because what I'm doing is I'm going to now use what we just talked about, okay? And that's what I do in my diet in order to maximize both sides of it. So essentially, I told you already that I eat 1 meal a day. You can check out my videos on that, or my playlist on fitness. You can hear about kind of all those things. But essentially, I'm fasting. Right? I'm doing what would be called intermittent fasting, but it's longer than that. I'm not just fasting to do. I'm fasting until 5, maybe 7 o'clock. All right? I'm fasting every day, and I'm doing a lot of cardio. Okay? I run 50 miles a week right now. And I don't always run 50 miles a week, but that's my current system right now, because I am trying to get more lean and more cut. Okay? Now, a lot of people would say, hey, John, you're running 50 miles a week. You should be anorexic, right? You should be like, you should have lost all your muscle. I'm actually gaining some mass, okay? All right, so I'm doing that. But here's the thing, okay? So the first thing I'm doing, right? We're thinking body recomposition here, is I am putting myself into a fasted state, okay? Where I don't have much glycogen. Hopefully I'm depleting that from my liver and from my muscles, okay? And I don't have glucose in my blood sugar, right, in my blood system. So what's happening when I'm doing this cardio and I'm fasted and there's no other energy source? It has to draw from fat. Now, it could draw from muscle, and some of it does. There is some protein breakdown, okay? But here's the thing. When you're fasted, it actually has a muscle preserving effect. There's a slight protein breakdown. There's going to be a little bit of that. But for the most part, right, you're going to take a little hit of protein breakdown, but for the most part, your body's going to tap into the fat stores, okay? And you're actually going to be in a muscle preservation stage. Your HGH level is going to go up, which is a hormone that's actually anabolic, that's actually going to help preserve muscle. Okay, now everything isn't super black and white between anabolic and catabolic. I know I made that seem like that before. But essentially, what I'm saying is that you're going to be in a state where you are preserving muscle and you're burning fat. Now, I'm doing that for a very, very long time throughout the day, right? If that makes sense to you. And then, and I have certain days which are my cardio days, okay? So on those days, I may eat, and when I eat, I'm going to eat usually a high fat or high protein. I'm going to eat very, very little carbs, or very high fiber green carbohydrates if I am eating any carbohydrates, because I don't want to replenish glycogen stores. Okay, so now in that respect, the amount that I'm eating is not necessarily that important. And on some days, I'll completely fast, right? I'll completely not eat anything at all. Okay, a lot of times I'll do it over the whole weekend. Okay, because what I'm trying to achieve is the next day, which is my lifting day, right? I might fast all day, do some cardio in the morning, and then let's say 3 o'clock I go to the gym to go lift, and I lift for 2 hours. I do a full body workout. Okay. And what I'm trying to do is, one effect that I didn't talk about is that when you lift weights, okay, when you utilize a muscle, it becomes more insulin sensitive. So remember, I said there's insulin receptors on your fat cells, on your muscle cells. Those cells on those receptors on the muscle cells become more insulin sensitive, right? And so by doing a full body workout, what ends up happening is that now my body is primed to be able to take glucose and store it into the muscles as glycogen because the glycogen's been depleted, okay? And it's also primed to build muscle after that happens. So then after my workout, after my lifting, then I'm going to take in some complex carbohydrates. Then I might have some rice, or I might have some potatoes or sweet potatoes or things like that, okay, along with some protein. And I'm going into an anabolic phase for a short period of time in order to build some muscle and to recover. And if you think about it, okay, remember, when I said about the calorie surplus and deficit, okay, when you have a surplus, what could it be stored as? It could be muscle, it could be fat, right? It could go into glycogen. So I'm able to take in those carbohydrates and not gain any fat because your body, it has to recover glycogen stores before it does anything else. So that's a prioritized system, right? So your body, if it takes in carbohydrates and you're missing the glycogen from your muscles or your liver, it's going to try and recover that. And so that those carbohydrates are going to that recovery. They can't go into the fat cells. It's just not possible until the glycogen is filled up. Then it spills over, then it goes into storing as body fat. So that's the basics of what I'm doing. And if you think about it, right, if I'm doing this right, okay, it doesn't really matter how many calories that I'm eating. If I eat less calories, right, I don't need to count the calories, but if I eat less calories, obviously I'll burn more fat, I'll be more catabolic, and that might be hurting my anabolism a little bit. I might not be gaining as much muscle, right? There's probably an optimum balance where I'm doing both, but if I eat too many calories, or then of course I could replenish those glycogen stores, and it could spill over, and it could get stored as fat, right? Because I have more than I need to actually build. But if I do it within a pretty broad window, okay, I'm going to lose fat, and I'm going to gain or at least preserve muscle at the same time. Now I've been doing this for 3 years. Okay, I am in the best shape that I've ever been in. I'm 6'3", okay, and I'm 220 pounds, about 221, 219, depends on the day, okay, and I'm probably around 8.5% body fat right now, okay, not I'm not super like lean, but I'm working on that, but I'm able to keep that while doing 50 miles a week running, right, and so when I'm doing a cut, I'm not losing muscle. Right, I'm sometimes gaining some muscle. I'm actually gaining strength right now. I'm experimenting with a couple of different things, but that's the basics, right? I'm going to put together a fitness program that outlines this whole entire process and gives you the whole system. But this is how I can do this and achieve these kind of results without counting calories, right? Because I don't have to be very super specific, right? As long as I'm making sure that, this body recomposition idea, that when I am burning calories, that a majority of it is coming from fat, and when I'm taking in calories, that a majority of it is either going to glycogen replenishment or protein synthesis, building new muscle protein, then you can see that fat is never getting a chance to be stored, but it's being chipped away at. Does that make sense? You see what I'm saying here? So that's the key, right? And at the same time, here's the other thing, guys, okay? I want you to understand this. And it does depend on what you eat, right? I eat healthy, low glycemic index foods, right? I eat a lot of greens, okay? I don't eat a lot of sugar, right? Except for right after that workout when I'll eat a little bit. That's okay because I'm replenishing glycogen. So what you eat is important. But I want you to understand something, okay? Which is why I told you that part, is because here's the thing. You can be in a deficit, and I've done this before, okay? I've dieted down before, and I've been in a big calorie deficit, and I've lost more muscle than fat, right? I've ended up worse than I was, okay? I got really skinny, lost a bunch of muscle, and I didn't have the kind of abs, the six-pack abs that I have now, okay? Even though I lost more weight, even though I was in more of a deficit. So this is why it's so important. Timing is so important in this concept of body recomposition. You have to understand how this works, right? So you can count calories, right? And you could be like, oh, I'm in 1,000 calorie deficit and I'm counting all my calories, okay? And you can even have your macros right. But if your timing is wrong, and you're eating the wrong kinds of food and the wrong combinations of food, right? Then you can actually store fat while you're in a deficit, okay? And the deficit is going to be made up for, you're going to get the energy from muscle, right? Or from the glucose that you're putting in your system that's going to be burned right away, and maybe a little bit from the fat. But you see what I'm saying? That's the key here, is if you want to look better, if you want to get more fit, if you want to get a better physique, what you need to be doing is you need to be optimizing body recomposition. When you're in a deficit, you want the calories that are being used to fuel that deficit to come from fat. When you're in a surplus, you want the calories that are being surplus to not get stored as fat. You want them to be either stored as in glycogen in your muscles or your liver, or you want them to be synthesized into protein, to new muscle fiber. Okay, I know this is a lot here, but I want you guys to understand. This is a much more important thing than counting calories, right? In general, right? The basic thing, and you hear this from a lot of people, is that you need to be in a deficit. And for the most part, I agree, right? If you're in a deficit, then you're going to lose weight, but it doesn't guarantee you're going to lose fat. That's the thing that most people get wrong, okay? And that's why it's important what you eat. That's why bodybuilders eat certain kinds of food. You notice this, right? And it's also dependent on the timing, okay? So there you go. If you have any questions about this, let me know. Like I said, I will be putting out a fitness course on this. It might be out by the time they're watching this. Probably not though, because I'm still tweaking some elements here. Make sure that you leave a question if you've got a question, and or hit the subscribe button to make sure you don't miss any of these videos. And go back and look at the playlists of all of my fitness stuff if you're interested in this. I go into details on various aspects of fitness and training in all those videos. I will talk to you next time. Take care.